Hi, this is my test run for Sunday, June the 14th, for our Sunday school lesson on wisdom coming from Proverbs, second chapter. I do not own rights to this music. Okay, so last week we started talking about wisdom, and we started off in Proverbs, first chapter, and we will continue on this throughout the month of June. So the icebreaker is when you get a new item, they send you instructions to put it together. But how many of us actually read the instructions? And then how many of us actually have a screw left over when we finish putting the item together? So we learned last week that the way that we obtain wisdom is to have the fear of the Lord in Proverbs 1 and 1. So we're going to continue from there. And today we're in Proverbs 2. Our Bible basis again comes from Proverbs 2, and we still have Solomon here talking with his son in the father-son moment. The memory verse is, "For the Lord giveth wisdom, out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding." The lesson aim is that we will conclude that the wisdom that comes from God is vital, cherish godly wisdom, and commit to pursue the wisdom that comes from God. So when we go back and look, we know that Solomon was the author of Proverbs, and we also know that he also wrote Songs of Solomon and Ecclesiastes. We know that he is the son of David. We know that he was a king. He actually was a young king. He took over being a king at the age of 20, very wise, and his downfall was that he loved women. We know that proverbs are parables or poems or wise sayings, and we know that they're necessary because they give us tools for the right way to live a godly life. There are 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs, and inside of that are over 300 proverbs. Some important terms that we're going to look at from last week and this week. This week is value, and value means worth, basically. We talked about knowledge last week, and that's everything that we learn, whether it be from a book or whether it be from a person. And then, of course, wisdom, which is where we are today, where you can either learn it or you can learn it the hard way. As my father-in-law used to say, that's fault wisdom. But knowledge without wisdom is just an educated idiot. So we don't want to be educated idiots. So in James 1 and 5, God tells us that if we desire wisdom, just ask for it. So this will be our discussion questions, which we'll come back to at the end. So looking at the scriptures, in verse 1 and 2, it's basically talking about learning wisdom. It talks about listening and seeking. And this is a teachable moment for Solomon and his son. In verse 3 and 4, it talks about the urgency of crying out and praying to God in prayer for the wisdom, and that we should have a passion for learning and discovering wisdom just like we have a passion for money. So it's like a treasure. Godly wisdom is a treasure worth seeking. In verse 5 and 6, we've been seeing a course of if-then statements. If you do this, then that. But we learn in verse 5 and 6 that wisdom is given to us by the Lord. In verse 7 and 8, we basically learn that he guides us and he leads us and he protects us. He's a buckler. That word buckler means shield, and he keeps us. So his saints are sacred, are consecrated, and they're set apart. So if you're saved and you're one of his, and you're protected. In verse 9 and 10, we look at how to recognize the differences and how to apply righteousness and judgment and equity. And basically, this means that we've now got it. We finally got it. We understand it. And wisdom is actually in our heart. And we've taken the knowledge. We know how to apply it. And we are living a righteous life. So in conclusion, in this fallen world, it's not easy to pursue wisdom. But we can with God. Wisdom means living a life according to God's rules. And when we live wisely, we receive great riches. We have favor. So our key learnings are that wisdom brings us closer to God. You'll understand that part that we learned last week about having reverence for God and the fear of the Lord. We learned that we have blessings and favor once we obtain wisdom. We also learned that it's a rewarder to those who are diligently seeking wisdom. We learned that the source of wisdom comes from the Lord. We learned that we have a promise of protection from the Lord. And we know that we have to read the word and cry out to him and pray to understand, and that through this process we'll have a change to our heart. We should remember the acronym FAT to remain focused, accountable, and teachable. For a person cannot properly know God without having a profound sense of reverence and respect for him. Big idea. If we make following godly wisdom part of our daily practice, and if you study and practice these daily teachings, it will become a part of what you feel to be right and what you know to be just. Then the Lord will protect us from the snares of life. We'll review announcements at the end, and then we'll also review prayer requests. Back to our discussion board, which is where we'll leave this here and enter into our discussion.